The last couple years, I've been buying these foam pumpkins from the Dollar Tree and turning them into jack-o'-lanterns using a lot of different methods I've seen online. So in this video, I'm kind of compiling them all together and showing you how I did them, going one by one, and hopefully not be too convoluted and confusing with the pumpkins. So I just started out with this one, drawing a basic jack-o'-lantern face, and then with a hot wire foam cutter, I just cut them out. A knife works fine, but I got this foam cutter and it's super fast. So now I know pretty much every video online that does the pumpkin corpsing uses a mix of liquid latex and cotton balls, but I guess I wanted to be different or just try something. I already had wood glue at home, so I thought I'd try using wood glue instead of liquid latex, and you can see how I'm just making a mess. Slathering on the wood glue and then applying cotton balls and then going over the cotton balls with more wood glue. The wood glue takes anywhere from a day to 2 days to dry, depending on how much you use. I made the mistake of trying to thin it down with water, and that just extends the drying time. But once the wood glue and cotton ball mixture did dry, I used all-purpose caulking to kind of unify that with the styrofoam texture of the pumpkin, and it also would help hide the obvious styrofoam texture and just make it all one unified, cohesive looking pumpkin. And I used just a little bit of water on my hand just to help smooth out the caulking and get a nice smooth finish. I draw out another face on a new pumpkin and cut that out again with the hot wire cutter. I also trimmed the bottom back half of the pumpkin a little bit so that when it sits on a table, the face is angled up so it's a little bit easier to see. I left the mouth pretty wide open so that I could press toothpicks in that would act as teeth. If I had to do this again, I would vary the width of these by using like skewers and maybe like some thinner wood dowel. Maybe like I ran it through a pencil sharpener or something to get that point to it. But I didn't record that part, so it's back to more wood glue and cotton balls, which I'm starting to just mix up on the freezer paper mat that I put down instead of trying to layer it on. And I'm using this to bulk up the eyebrow ridges and the lip area of the pumpkin. And I also apply it to the stem that I cut out of just regular XPS foam and attach to the top of the pumpkin. And once all that is dried, I go back for a second pass. And I'm focusing more on building up the ridges of the pumpkin so it doesn't look so spherical. So now I'm going to start using Gorilla Glue because I haven't made enough of a mess yet. I put glue in a cup with a little bit of water because water helps it cure faster, I think. I originally saw this technique used in Eric M. Boyd's video, which I'll link in the description below. Because Gorilla Glue foams up, it leaves a pretty cool texture. For this pumpkin, I'm not using it in the way I've seen it used mostly, as a way to make the outer texture of a pumpkin bumpier. Hopefully when I apply it to the toothpick teeth, it'll make it look sort of like pumpkin guts. At least that's kind of the hope. So I do one pass of the bottom teeth and let it cure. And then I do a second pass of the top row of teeth and then just kind of let gravity do its work. And hopefully it turns out looking kind of cool. I didn't like my initial drawing on this third pumpkin, so I just drew over it with a different colored tiny marker. I went with a more orky vibe, although it's kind of just spiky teeth with an underbite. So I cut the pumpkin in half horizontally. And then cut the top half in half again. and then I cut a bit of the middle out of it so that when I reassemble it, there will be an underbite. And I had to redraw the face so it's a little bit more centered. And then I just cut out the eyes and the nose. Yep. And you can see how I got it glued back together with the underbite. And for the teeth, I'm just using some XPS foam and carving them into spikes. And then I'm just placing them in there with a bit of toothpick, and then eventually I hot glue those in there. Back to the wood glue and cotton ball mess. Just mixing it all together. Thank goodness I got a mat down. And I'm just bulking up that bottom lip, making sure to kind of press in those ridges of the pumpkin. And I also bulk up the brow ridges, something I do on pretty much everything I do. And then I'm just going over the teeth with wood glue just to have a harder outer coating. And I put a bit over the XPS stem that I cut and glued in. Once that's dried, I go back in, and then again, just like the last one, work on the ridges. This will also help cover up the seam from when I cut the pumpkin in half and then reassembled it, and it'll all look cohesive enough, I guess. Then for the fourth and final pumpkin, I go for a more traditional jack-o'-lantern face. And I cut that out with the foam wire cutter. I go over it with some wood glue and cotton balls, just kind of, well, I build up the brow ridge and then I kind of randomly add it in spots to make the pumpkin a little less uniform looking. Then I mix up some more Gorilla Glue and water and just apply it over the entirety of the pumpkin so it'll be sort of bumpy and overall just kind of unnatural looking and not uniform anymore. Once everything's dried and cured, I press into the bottom of the pumpkins the tea lights I'm going to use to light them just to get a nice impression. And then I cut those out with the hot wire cutter because the lights are just going to be a friction fit. Then I take the pumpkins outside to spray paint, and I'm spraying far enough away that the aerosol in the paint doesn't really melt the foam too much. I mean, the outside of all the pumpkins are covered in something anyways, so that won't melt, but the inside wasn't too badly damaged. I'm just using a yellowish orange so that the pumpkins look a little bit more natural than having just the white interior. And then I coat the outside with an orange spray paint. The paint scheme of a pumpkin isn't super elaborate, obviously, so I just touch up some overspray with a bit of orange paint. The stems get painted a dark brown and then get a tan dry brush. And then I use a reddish brown to kind of darken the ridges of the pumpkin just to add some depth. And I mix that reddish brown with a bit of water to do a wash over the pumpkin to bring out some of that texture of the cotton ball wood glue mixture. And I thought I'd try using wood stain just to try it. I'm using Minwax Gunstock color. I don't know, tint, whatever you want to call it. It obviously takes longer to dry, but it was just something I thought I'd try, and it ended up looking pretty cool. So here's how they look all finished and at night. Looks like somebody bought a fog machine. And I added some more pumpkins that I made the year previous to the entire group of jack-o'-lanterns. Here are actually some in-progress shots that I took of those pumpkins back when I made them. It was mostly a lot of hot glue and XPS foam, as you can see, and a bit more experimenting with the Gorilla Glue. But hopefully you picked up some tricks and techniques to use to make your own creepy craft foam jack-o'-lanterns. And if you do make your own, tag me on Instagram, at Monsters and Whatnot. I'd love to see what kind of creations you come up with. If you have your own tips or techniques that I didn't use in this video, feel free to type them in the comments below. It's always cool to see how other people do things. And if you made it this far, Gourd Buster the like button. See what I did there? Alright, enjoy the rest of the Halloween season, and I'll catch you later.